This is the Sacred Knowing of Is video series with Tisziji Muñoz, interview number 13. I had some questions for you regarding chapters 105 to 110. Are desires what translate into experiences?
Yes. Yes, desires are powerful. In fact, for some, it may be the root of all evil. It may in fact be suffering. Desire and suffering are equated. Without desire, there's no suffering. Without ignorance, there's no suffering. So these are very important points to make clear, because who knows what desire is? Since everyone is just busy being human, they don't examine themselves particularly in terms of being full of desires or being motivated or driven by desires. But this goes way back into the blood and the ancestry. Okay? We are driven by desires. We are driven by desire in the form of ambition. Desire in the form of needing others. And thus compromising ourselves. So desire is key to all of this, yes? Yes, so it does manifest. Yeah, this whole world is created out of desire, in a manner of speaking. The condition of the earth right now is the sum of the desires of all of its inhabitants, so to speak. See, so we see desire plays very powerfully. See, in the mix of what is manifested and what is created. We're talking about warfare. We see the desire based upon political power to control others or change others and so on. So desire is very powerful. Yeah.
Can it translate on the astral level?
It does translate in the dream state, yes. In fact, some experiences are the manifestation of desires in the dream state, which once revealed to certain individuals, they feel that that's what they need to do. So then the desire perpetuates itself from the subtle to the gross to the manifest. See? The desire to have children. You have a desire, it's an internal subtle thing, let's say an impulse. And then you have children, and then you realize what children is not about happiness. The desire to have something is not always about happiness. The idea is to have the desire, if you need a desire, to have, if you need to have, enlightenment and liberation. And you may have that, but you may not be able to get to that, because that desire is getting back to your reality, see, already free reality, original freedom reality. In other words, spirit first. Who really wants to be spirit first? In the midst of your incarnated materialism, who wants to be free of that?
Do we pick up on or attach to the desires of others consciously and unconsciously?
Absolutely. Mostly unconsciously, but then there's a considerable amount that we are conscious of. See, you can be in a room with people, but you don't know what they desire apart from or beyond how they're appearing to be. See? So someone can come up to you and give you a hug, let's say, or shake your hand if it's a business arrangement, but you don't know what their desires are. See? They may not know what their desires are until the encounter occurs. And then the desire may come into their mind. See? A person, let's say a woman, not looking for anybody particularly, goes to a meeting, she finds somebody who she sees as really desirable, like, oh, is this the one, right? Or the man relative to women, is this the one? See, the desire comes up because you see something you might have that could be the next experience, adventure, or link for you in your process of, let's say, moving through your life. See? So desire is very powerful, see? And it has many levels, which is what we're talking about in terms of spiritual teachings. The many levels, the multi-dimensionality of desire, see, as havingness and attachment. See? Not detachment, but we should have the desire for detachment too. See? And we do have that, that's also built into us. See? Because we go back to our first experience is to be detached from the mother. So detachment is native to us. See? To be free, see? To breathe for ourselves. It's given to us at birth, but we don't remember it as such.
Does desire, can it stem from like past life karma?
Always. Right. If you're born, that means you're coming from the blood. If you're coming from the blood, that means there's a continuity there, there's a continuum. See, we're talking about ancestral continuum. And so yes, it's born to us, and then we have to purify that. That's what practice, spiritual practice is about. The purification of those desires which defeat our spiritual purpose. If you have one, if you can see one.
How does the master show up in dreams?
Usually in some form of light, with a definite lightness to it. See? Good news, in other words. It's not bad news. Always good news. It's always about the teachings. It's always about freedom from suffering. So it could be guidance, it could be wisdom, it could be association, it could be friendship, but it's always really rooted in the teachings and the wisdom. That's the presence of the master. Love, peace, and understanding. See? And maybe even joy and wonderment at the same time. Awe. See? See? Concerning the spiritual, not concerning the material.
Is there any time when around friends or business associates when we don't or can't pick up on the suffering or neuroses of others?
We're not picking up on our own suffering. Even now, in the moment, we don't pick up on our own suffering because it's covered. Because we're preoccupied, we're distracted for the most part. We're busy, we're surviving. We're on time, we're in time, and we are from time for the most part. So the idea of spiritual practice in the midst of a very busy materialistic schedule means creating space for some kind of sacred remembrance, some sense of resonance with the spiritual, with the heart, with the cosmic, with the greater spiritual reality or the spirit world itself. But I don't mean the world of spirits, but the world of the Great Spirit, the higher God worlds, let's say. We need to create that because we are picking up too much of the unconscious materialism and the gravitational forces that surround us, which we call social influences and worldly influences. So these have to be balanced by let's say, an urge to freedom, and being free of that. So we need to balance that out. Now, if we think in terms of our consciousness, every night we have to go into unconsciousness. So what we don't do in terms of going to superconsciousness during the daytime, because of our karmic debt, then the unconscious brings you to some degree of balance. If you can sleep at all. Many peeps cannot even sleep, because they're so restless and so absorbed and used up by their attachments. They can't sleep, they can't rest. And so the compromise there is unconscious, but then we have to be conscious in terms of letting go of the compromise. That is to say, assuming a more spiritual view of what it is that we are involved in this particular lifetime. Because we're not only materially, let's say, designed, we are also spiritually designed. So it's a matter of switching the material circuitry off if you can, and turning on the spiritual circuitry when you can. It's always there, it's perfect, it's always there. You just have to access the switch, turn it on, and there it is.
From chapter 105, you write, the inherited custom of meat eating, which more often follows the karma of killing or sacrificing of animals for food, is unnecessary, unhealthy, and sinful. It is unwise unless absolutely necessary, since it is both spiritually and planetarily harmful. Such practices will become obsolete and discouraged when the physicians and doctors themselves become enlightened enough to change their own primitive, mechanical, and lower spirit negative habits and tendencies, whereafter they may lead others to do the same, not merely for their body's health's sake, but for their psychic and spiritual sake as well. Do you think that it's possible in this century or even in the next few decades for a shift to occur in that direction?
It's already been happening, and it's already happening. Scientists are seeing that there are other things we can eat in different ways to eat, so as to completely gratify the needs, the nutritional requirements of the human body. So this is becoming more scientifically intelligent and wise at the same time. So there are more people getting away from, let's say, killed creature food. And that works. We've been surviving on it for ages. And it does work, it's good. Well, but we're also going to admit that it's not necessarily the healthiest for all people. And this is regarding and respecting the relative needs of people who are differently configured in terms of their chemistry. So even though you come through a family line, doesn't mean that for you, that line in its food and its habits and its customs are true. See? Because you can be born from a different dimension, you can be born from a different part of the universe, and come in with a different need, and thus, from that point of view, extend, let's say, the expansion of your river of blood, let's say, culturing. And that's what we all have the right to do, but we don't always have the courage to do that. See? And that's because we may not have the inspiration to see beyond that to begin with. So.
What are your thoughts on animal testing in the medical field? Do you think it's unnecessary?
Well, it seems to be necessary. So what is it? Is there a choice? Is there animals, or you test humans? Better to test the animals, I would say. If you have to test it all, better to test the lower creatures. I think the rule is that the human being is supposed to more or less be the superior and take care of, the caretaker of all the other species. Okay, so if there needs to be a sacrifice, it has always been relative to the animals. See? But we're saying not exclusively so. It has always been relative to the animals, and then in certain societies and cultures there have been human sacrifices. And so I'm saying right now, perhaps in this age, we have come to our wits about human sacrifice and see and have a deeper, more wise view of things. Say, no, humans are here to fulfill a life mission, right? And it's not in the best interest of let's say, the cosmic intelligence to cut short that life interest unless it's absolutely necessary. So we have societies and laws determining when and if to cut off the life of certain individuals, say, because of laws, because of, let's say, conditions and culturing. And I think that is even changing as we move forward. If we are moving forward and becoming a saner, wiser, spiritual culture of, let's say, humans living together, then there will be less of that and more enhancement of life, more education of life. Giving people an opportunity to grow more, to learn a bit more, and to change, transform into better beings. But people have to be generous enough to give others the opportunity to do that. We have to begin with the children. See, we are not, as an American nation, giving the children the best options. See, we're not doing that. See, we fail to fulfill the dream that many of the children that are given to us have. To become better human beings. We're making it more difficult by, let's say, programming and politics for these children to grow and become sane and prosperous and productive individuals. We have to change that if we can.
From chapter 105 you go on to write, many there are indeed who suffer bad chemistry of body and mind from their ignorant indulgence in the primitive eating customs of their ignorant forefathers. Thus, humankind will require many generations of true vegetarians and fruitarians to purify the physical body of the inherited animal karma of each family line and all that comes with it in the form of the negative emotions of anger, lust, greed, selfishness, and vanity. Mm-hmm. Are you saying that consuming animal flesh enhances negative emotions not only for oneself but for future generations in one's bloodline?
Well, it may tend to toughen the person, because if you're eating animal flesh, I'm just saying, this may be theory for many people who are insensitive, then you're taking on animal flesh, which means the flesh for, let's say, protecting yourself, defense. See? So you're taking on more defense karma. See? So you're strengthening your defense programs by eating meat energy, in a manner of speaking. It's making you stronger and harder. See, it may be harsher in some ways, even though you still have a heart, so you can balance that out with hardness. But the idea, I think, is to eat more light, not darkness, not more pain and suffering, product of, let's say, torture and slaughter. I mean, that's one kind of food, and maybe that makes some people happy, but you have to be pretty low on the totem pole to be happy with slaughtered food, unless that's all you can eat. Beyond that, we need the opportunity to eat more light, spirit. We need to eat spirit food, spirit that enhances and inspires, intelligence and wisdom, the spiritual side of life, and happiness and freedom, and goodness that are part of that level of reality. So we need to look to the light. And if we're talking about being Christians, Jesus was all about the heavens and the light. Okay? It wasn't about, eating slaughtered food, particularly, even though that may have been the custom to a certain degree there. Then, it certainly isn't necessary anymore now that we've grown more intelligent, more scientifically astute relative to these issues of chemistry. So we need to eat more light. People need to produce more light food, not junk food and death food, but more light food, say more peace food, and we'll be peace of beings.
How would you define progress from the spiritual point of view?
Progress. Becoming happier. See? Understanding pain. And not identifying with pain as who you are. Something that happens to the body. It's not your spiritual condition. It's a physical condition. Emotional condition, maybe. Because of ignorance, ordinarily. Ignorance in terms of how things are created. How we experience certain things. See? Why we experience certain things. And how we, because of our birth, create the karma because of who we were born to. And what we continue is all part of the logic of the stream, see, of ancestral karma. It's a logic. So you're born to die. There's no doubt about it. There's no exception to that rule. But how you experience your life can be one of choice and willful participation in darkness or willful participation in light.
From chapter 106, you write, the concept of labor prevalent in earthly societies stinks of the ego or limitation of competition, ambition, and struggle. What about those who labor in the spirit of serving the master? Is that different, or is it still driven by ego and subject to the limitations you describe?
Well, it depends on what the master is. If the master is a politician, that's one thing. If the master is a physician, that's another thing. If the master is a lawyer, that's another thing. If the master is a military person, that's another thing. It really depends on what the master is. You have to know what the master is. If you're talking about the Jesus type, the spiritual master type, then you have to know what that is and what it requires, what it demands of you to be in tune with it. And what was his teaching, which I think is pretty much the general teaching of many, up to a point. They all don't agree that you should just turn the other cheek, roll over and be smashed and obliterated. They don't all agree with that. Okay. But they all agree with kindness. See, they all agree with a peaceful viewpoint and a spiritual approach to life. That means a wisdom approach, without arms, necessarily. But in this world, a barbarian sort of like, let's say, normalcy, then of course everyone's got a right to have their gun in this country. It's guns first. First guns, then we talk. Guns first, and then the Bible. First guns, and then the Bible. See? And then the crucifix. That's way down the line there. Because we're not here to be crucified, right? We're not here to be as courageous as Jesus was. See, we can't handle that. So we're not really Christians unless we're willing to go the whole route relative to where Jesus went. See, you're not going to be righteous. Yeah, be righteous, but you're not going to be a Christian till you undergo the whole process of the master. In that case, you want to follow the master completely. You want to live as the master. Now, that's that teaching. Then you have others who, in terms of like the Buddha, this person who went through a certain life, a royal life, and then practiced with the yogis. He took his instructions, and then that was what he became. He became a certain kind of master of peace, completely peace, right? Peace in terms of wisdom. And he brought out teachings that were depolarizing, in effect, not polarizing you. It wasn't about woe to and all the rest of this, which was useful for the time. Now it was about, peace. Meditate. Stop. Look and listen to the spiritual, which is not unlike Christianity. Because Jesus said in his own right, he said, no, listen, don't be as the hypocrites do, standing up in the churches or the synagogues or whatever, as he stated. Socially, let's say, maybe even pretending to be spiritual, which many people are doing, and they have a right to do that. But he said, no, go into your closet, speak to your Father directly, which is a wiser approach, which is probably consistent with the meditation approach. Self-realization. Realize it for yourself. How many of us know what to do if you had an opportunity to talk to the Father? What is the Father to you, that thing? So that remains mystery. It's like, who and what is the Father? Why isn't it the Mother? Why does it have to be the Father? Maybe it's the Mother-Father. I think that's a better one. Talk to the Mother-Father in you, and see what it has to say about what you need to do and what you need to follow for yourself. See? Because it's really not about going outside of yourself in any case. If we're talking about the spiritual, it's never outside. It's never social, just material. The spiritual is inside, see, the subtle. See, that's the heaven within, the kingdom within. When and how do we get to the kingdom within? Is it a belief, is it faith, or is it a realization? Beyond talking. Is it language, is it teaching, or is it something that has to do with more reality check?